Hello. Okay, good evening. Let's get started for today's session over here. As usual, welcome. Okay, we'll be going through the markets over here. Walk through some of the potential opportunities as well. And of course, if you guys have any questions, just feel free to put it into the chat. We'll be able to look at it. Okay. So yep. Quick one here for the year so far. We are starting to see a bit of a volatility kicking in. Okay. But of course, if you are looking at the dollar itself, to be honest, there's not much of a clear movement yet. But of course, in terms of like equities, we did see the S&P, create some volatility already. Okay. So that's something to note, right? Every year, generally at the end of the year, as well as the very start of the year, volatility is a little bit lower, liquidity is lower, then things will start to pick up. All right. So this year moving forward, I would say the focus would still be very much on the Fed. There are some shift in the expectation from late last year going into the start of the year as well, where initially was a expectation of 4 cuts, and then right now it has reduced to 2. Okay, and of course, this year is officially where Trump will take presidency in the U.S., right? So that's where his policy will start to roll out, and we'll see some impact across board. Okay, so let's take a look at the dollar index as of this week's perspective. I'm very much neutral on most of the major pairs simply because of the dollar index as well. Okay, I'm basically neutral at it for now. Yes, we are overall in an uptrend. Okay, we are forming higher low. However, we don't really have a corrective pullback yet. Even this wasn't very much a corrective pullback, right? So as of now, yes, it's going higher, but we don't have the pattern combination or the pattern structure to give us a bullish bias, right? So that's the reason why I'm neutral, and basically waiting and see how the market is going to eventually develop here. Okay, from wave count perspective, we can definitely see this as a potential 5-wave completion. This here can also be where wave 3 is, and of course wave 4 is there. Now I'm not too particular as of now, right, in terms of like the internal counts as well. Because simply put, this is basically a very clear-cut direction. There's no buy kind of bias right now. There's no bullish bias at the moment because we don't have the corrective pullback. So that's where it stands right now for the dollar index. Okay. So of course, that's where if you kind of like put that into the major pairs, we really don't have like very clear direction as well, right? Like euro dollar, we did break that low, but it's not a very decisive break. The market seems to be pulling back a little bit. Okay, so neutral here as well because again, if this forms a correction, then we might have a high odds of going lower. But until then, it's just coming down, but there's no continuation structure pattern, right? So I'm just gonna leave it as of now. The pound dollar is actually clearer in the momentum perspective, right? It's coming down very clear, very clean break. But again, we want to see some sort of correction. If we can get that, then obviously we'll be looking for a sell side, right? So yeah, I mean, major pairs, even on a higher time frame, you can see overall it's really just coming down, right? We are approaching some of the key areas where you can see over here. So something to note as well from a higher time frame perspective. But I think since we're monitoring this on a week-to-week basis or even daily, right? In terms of like the reports itself, there's not so much concern, in terms of like the longer term perspective, right? Because basically we are kind of monitoring on a regular basis, okay, and following through like what the market is developing. Okay, so pound dollar here, that's my take. We just leave it until we get a clear combination. Aussie dollar, very much the same as the euro, right? We can't get a break, but market seems to be bouncing. We need time to see how all this major pairs eventually play out. Okay, dollar CAD as well. Again, the market has been in consolidation, obviously since the mid of December last year until now. It's just sideways move. we'll see how things roll out from here, right? Because if this is going to be corrective in general, then this impulse is still in control. There's a still good chance that market will actually break that high first. Okay, so neutral here as well. Okay, and really just leave it aside until something clear actually develops. Right? Now for the yen side of things, there are some opportunities to keep watch. Primarily, of course, you can see I've tagged the dollar yen. Okay, there are also potential setups coming in, maybe on pound yen or odd yen. But generally, in terms of like lower time frame setups, dollar yen here is one of the higher probability ones that I would say would develop within the week. Okay, so from H4 perspective, the bias here is bearish. Okay, because we are seeing this as a cross structure. I mean, very clear. Okay, you can see the market is going higher, but it's going higher with lower momentum. Okay, tree touch here as well. You can see that 1, 2, 3. Okay, internally here also as a minor crawl. We did get a move to the downside, but not the best move of all. It's still a valid one. We managed to take out that low, and right now the market is pulling back, right? So overall, the direction bias is definitely bearish. Whether is it going to be a short-term pullback, maybe towards this low here, or we can see a deeper pullback, maybe towards the zone. To be honest, as a shorter-term kind of swing trade, right, it's not too much of a concern, because if you're going to take a trade here, again, this target, or this target is really up to individual how you want to manage it, right? So that's the potential move, right? So I very quickly jump maybe to the lower time frame to kind of walk through a little bit. Okay, we do have the entire setup over here being valid. Okay, we have the previous high, market took out, reverses very quickly, so that's what we call a liquidity sweep. We have this previous low here taken out as well, so that's the break of structure. So kind of confirming, this is like a minor fake break, and then the market came back down. It's right now pulling back. What I like about this pullback so far is that it's not going up like impulsively, right? It's going up correctively, up, down, and then of course using FIPS here for more specific areas and levels. Okay, now what I like also is that we have this minor swing, okay, before entry. So what can happen is ideally price can tag us in and then reverses, so then this act as form of a liquidity grab as well, right? Okay, now the additional factor that obviously is lacking right now in this time frame is the kind of fair value gap, right? But I think with the hourly candle here so obvious, if you go down to a lower time frame, it's gonna be there, right? You can see it's gonna be there. Okay, so in terms of like setup, this is valid, right? Everything is great. That's the part where I'm interested in taking this trade if we can get price to pull back a little bit towards the entry zone at somewhere between 158.20, right? Yeah, so that's the setup. And of course, if you take a look at the target on the lower time frame, we're essentially just looking at this swing low, right? But as I mentioned, you can even target this low or even the previous low to really extend your potential profit. Okay, yeah, so that's my take on the dollar yen. Something to keep watch for the week itself. Okay, the other one is gold. So 4-hour time frame, short-term bearish bias. The reason for that is I'm expecting some sort of a pullback. If you stretch beyond this short-term pullback, the structure can be a little bit more complex, because what we can forecast here is there's a good possibility this is 1, 2, 3 completed. So this is an impulse leg that's currently in control, and this is the pullback, and we can't expect this to break that top, right? So that's one possibility. Now the other possibility is this is the impulse leg in control, and this pullback is completed, and right now we are seeing something like that. Okay, so depending on how you're looking at the structure overall, the longer term direction might be different. Okay, but the lower time frame, or I would say shorter time frame perspective, is very much still in expectation of a pullback. Okay, even if let's say this is the impulse leg control, we are expecting that pullback before this push up anyway. Okay, so that's the part where, again, zooming back in, I think it's worth focusing on the possible sell opportunity in the near term, right? Whether price is just gonna react off this targets or is gonna keep going. Again, back to like how you're gonna manage your trade. If it's in profits, that's up to individual as well, right? So that's the expectation, and of course, if you go down to the lower time frame, not the most ideal setup, to be very frank. That's why I don't have the pending order yet. We don't really have a very clear liquidity sweep to get that trigger in. We do get the break here. We do get some sort of a potential three-wave pullback. We have a very, very small fair value gap, not ideal as well. Candles is not very, very clear with momentum. It's not something that is the most ideal setup, right? I mean, you can say it's valid, but it's not like something I'll be very, very confident in. Okay. So for that reason, I think this is worth monitoring, but I don't have a pending order placed in yet. Okay. Because what can happen is price can easily go up, sweep this liquidity, and then only give us the setup that perhaps would be the one that brings us to the downside, right? Okay, so overall, I'm just not gonna be rushing into trades on gold for now. Okay, but that's my take, right? Can this trade work out? Maybe, right? Yeah, but just highlighting this here, so for those of you interested, you can keep a close watch on that. Silver. Okay, silver is coming down and getting very close to the 618. Okay, ideally I want to see how it reacts off that, of course. But as of now, we are overall bullish. But of course, if market just takes up that with momentum, things change, and we need to update it. But for now, that's the take, right? I mean, if this goes back up a little bit more, it comes back down, then that forms a very clear correction. The bias is super clear. It's going to be upside, right? Then we'll start to look for buy trade opportunities. Yeah, so the take right now is how is price going to develop in the near term. If you can get the clear structure, then obviously you'll be looking for upside. Okay. Crude oil is currently testing the high here. The top here, price is still there. We are expecting some sort of pullback. Okay. I think the structure from wave perspective is quite clear, right? This is definitely impulsive in nature. And then if you look left, that's the lowest point, right? So that's where you start to think, okay, if this is going to be the most impulsive move, that's going to be wave 3. Then naturally, this is wave 1, wave 2. We might see wave 4 and wave 5, right? And then internally here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in orange. Okay. So we are kind of expecting a wave 4 pullback at the moment. Okay. And then over here, what we want to see is you can go down to the lower time frame and kind of see if you can get a counter trend setup coming in. Right now, there isn't any yet, right? Because what we want to see is we have a potential kind of fake break here if the market actually take out this low, right? So there is some condition or prerequisite that it needs to happen first before the setup builds in. Okay, so it's still an early stage. We're just gonna leave it as of now. But that's the take on crude oil. Okay. Then we have S&P. So S&P over here, since late last year, early this year, we're expecting that pullback, right, to kind of at least complete a three-wave structure. There wasn't kind of an obvious sell setup. Personally, I don't kind of like selling into equities as well. Okay, but I think once we see this tag and then we have kind of a V-shaped formation here, we can start to look for buy side, right? Given of course the setup builds in. Okay, but in terms of like overall direction, this bounce here is pretty decent. Okay, and of course it fulfills a three wave. It fulfills the Fibonacci expectation as well. So all we need right now is obviously a lower time frame pullback correctively, then we can actually get a potential setup built in, right? Okay, so if you look at this here, this can be some sort of a little fake break. Okay, not the nicest one of obviously. And then we have this minor high here, kind of got taken out again, not the clearest, impulsive break above. But it's still technically valid, right? What we want then is a correction or a slow little pullback. We don't want it to come down too fast. Okay. So that's something to know. I think this one here would need maybe another 1 or 2 days to build up. Okay. Unlikely it's gonna be something today or tomorrow. Okay. Because the correction needs time. We want it to be slow, so it's not something gonna happen so soon. Right? So it might take, as I mentioned, like 2-3 days. So the earliest possible is maybe like Thursday, I would say. Okay, they can keep an eye on that. Okay. Then we have the pound yen. Okay. So pound yen is coming down very, very impulsive, but right now it's kind of bouncing a little bit. If we can get 3 wave, then that's where we get a clear opportunity to sell. Okay. The high time frame is actually giving us a very clear opportunity to the downside, right? I mean, the final expectation can be all the way down here. Okay. So this one here, if you go down to 4-hour, okay, all you really need to wait for is the 3 wave pullback, and then you can look for the sell. Okay. So direction bias is quite clear. Will this happen within the week? Unlikely, because if it's a 4-hour 3 wave setup, it's gonna take a couple of days, right? So maybe this is gonna be something closer towards like a next week trade opportunity. Okay, rather than this week. Okay, so this one here, I'm not gonna be focusing too much in terms of setup. Then we have odd yen. Very, very similar to like pound yen. Okay, in fact, like most yen pairs are likely gonna be moving quite similarly, right? So this one here, we have a 3 wave structure. Potentially wave 4 is completed, right? And then we are kind of seeing wave 5 in development to complete this bigger one here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Yeah, so bias is still bearish, and the thing here is again quite similar to the pound yen, right? You want to see a 3 wave move. Okay, 1, 2, 3, right? So if you don't get that, then obviously you don't want to be like forcing something in and taking a trade, right? So for this entire bias here to be valid, price must actually respect the swing high, right? It cannot break above like 99.15. Okay, conservative target to downside will be where the previous swing low is, but most of the 5th wave obviously would extend like beyond wave 3. Okay, but that's the conservative target where the previous low is. Now, can you look out for short-term trades to the upside as a pullback? If you go down to like hourly, okay, there might be that opportunity, okay, where you can see the setup as, oh, this is a fake break, this is kind of like the breaker structure. So if you can get pullback, we can look for the third wave trade to the upside as a retracement pullback, right? Possible as well. Okay, so again, back to like what plan you want to have for yourself, right? Are you gonna be comfortable taking a counter trend short-term retracement trade, right? So the multi-time frame gives you at least that kind of like perspective where today, if you want to take a buy trade on the hourly, okay, on the 4-hour scale, what are the moves that you're potentially trading in, right? So for me, this kind of situation, I wouldn't be focusing on the buy side. Okay, that's how I'm gonna look at it, right? Yeah, so just want to highlight on that. Okay, pound Australia price managed to take out this low. Okay, but I'm still waiting for the pullback to give us a correction here before like changing the bias to bearish, right? Because if this just do a V, then this can be a fake break and the market can actually go back up. So yeah, we'll keep it as as of now, neutral. We'll see how things can develop, then we can come back. Okay, last one here is BTC. Then we'll go into some of the index. BTC is currently testing the key area. Okay, so this is where we can start to expect, or go down to a lower time frame and start to source and see if we can get a setup. Okay, the bias is bearish right now, and the expectation is a 3-wave development. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, right, and then that would potentially complete the correction for more upside. Yeah, so that's the idea. The target here is around 86.4 or 86,400. Okay, this one here, if you go down to the hourly, right, what you would love to see obviously is not like your typical, you know, sweep of this high and then come back and break this and then wait for the pullback. I mean, you can wait for that. That's definitely like more conservative. But what you can look out for is if price comes back down, manage to take out some internal low here, then that can be your first trade setup. Okay, not gonna be the most conservative one, but you can still ride on it, right? And the idea is you're not looking at, you know, any kind of like setup that occurs, but this setup here is currently occurring around the higher time frame, 15 and 6.8, right? So that's something to note if you're into like short selling the crypto side of things. Okay, so that's on BTC. Okay, very quickly I'll go over to some of the index over here. Okay, so S&P we kind of covered that. NASDAQ have quite similar overall. Okay, I think recently what's different is gonna be like the Dow Jones, right? I mean, NASDAQ and S&P seems to have like very close correlation in terms of how they develop. So Dow Jones over here is slightly different. You can even see the pattern. Okay, we have the market reacting off this area. Okay, now on top of that, we have this here as a little bit of what we call a cross structure development, right? I mean, if you pull out RSI, okay, there is that divergence between this low point and that point. Okay, so that kind of potentially indicate a reversal, right? So we have a couple of like factors coming together. So if I'm gonna put things together, right, I would see it as this is a swing low currently. If we get a corrective pullback, okay, that means slow move, yeah. Okay, that's a good chance we'll start to see upside. The only confirmation we don't have now is this swing high hasn't been taken up, right? So if you're looking to take a buy trade based on this is aggressive. If you're a bit more conservative, you would wait for price to take this out, come back, only you buy in, right? Yeah, so that's the slight difference between Dow Jones and the other two index. Okay, the other thing to note here for Dow Jones is that you want to pay attention to this swing high. Okay, because what can happen over here is this can be a first leg down. We get a pullback towards this area, and then the market can still move lower and break that low. Okay, very possible. Because this can just be a first move down, right? Which is essentially an A wave, right? And then a B wave, and then we can still expect one more down. Right? But again, as I mentioned, you know, if you're doing like more of like regularly monitoring the market, you can flow with it, right? In a way where you buy first in the short term. If this keeps going, then you just manage accordingly. And anyway, by the time you reach here, you know, and if you're looking at trades here, you have ample room for you to manage it, okay, along the way. Okay, so that's on that. This is German DAX, so we're kind of getting that first pull back. Okay, that's the expectation of German DAX. Okay, so we are looking at a possible 3-wave move. Okay, given this starts to do a 3-wave correction, okay, then yeah, we can then expect more downside, right? Okay. So given that's how we can look out for it. On the bigger time frame, zoom out picture perspective, this would be the impulse leg in control, 1, 2, 3, and then expectation is upside. Okay, FTSE here. Okay, maybe just stretch this a little bit. This is the expectation, right? Potentially a 5-wave move to the upside, so we are kind of expecting a simple 3-wave pullback. Okay, so short term here will be bearish, given if price actually pull back correctively towards the key area, and start to look out for the opportunity to maybe sell it. All right. China and Hong Kong, I think overall you might not want to touch them even for now. Yeah, I would say give it a little bit more time and see how things are going to develop for this two first. Okay. Nikkei. Okay, Nikkei has this little top that hasn't been broken. Okay, and of course, if you kind of then put this on the bottom here, you can see this as a range, right? So if you want to look for short-term opportunity, there's a good chance that market will come and retest the low. Then of course you just need to assess, is the risk-reward ratio worth it according to whatever setup you're looking at, right? The other perspective is wait for it to come down and then look for that reversal back up. Okay. Yeah, but I'm not a fan of this right now. Okay, I think there are better opportunities that you can keep an eye on and be focused on instead of like trying to squeeze something out of this. Okay. This is Australia 200. Okay. Right now the take here is very much similar to silver, right? You can see the pattern structure expectation, right? We have our first move up. This can be a 3-wave development here. Okay, if you can get a pullback in 3 as well, 1, 2, 3, maybe towards the 618, we can expect another push up, right, to complete the bigger 1, 2, 3. Now this chart is very similar to what is actually developing in silver, right? You can do a quick comparison on that. Okay, we have this move up, 1, 2, 3, right? Yeah, so that's why you realize the view on it between silver and of course Australian index is more or less the same, right? Okay, that's my take on Australian index. Then this is the Switzerland. Okay, Switzerland over here we are expecting short-term downside. Okay, so if I kind of put this as a swing high. Okay, again, I don't go down to a lower time frame for some of this index here, but I think overall you guys should be quite clear in terms of like the setup that I use, you know, to execute those trades, right? So the idea again is if you can get a pullback towards like key area, and then you can look for a setup within that key area, then you can't align with the higher time frame direction to the downside, and that's where you kind of take the trade, right? Okay. And then on the higher time frame perspective, after this move down, okay, we would then expect that up move. Okay. Okay, so that's on Switzerland side of things. Okay. Good. Okay, then this is the Singapore STI. Okay, Straits Times Index. Yeah, so short term here, this is the expectation, right? If you can get a pullback, then we are expecting this to move lower. Then this will be seen as a potential diagonal move. Yeah, so that's on the index side of things. Okay, good. So I see question on Swiss yen. Okay, Swiss yen here. Let me see on the higher time frame. Yeah, I think the the zoom in aspect of this, this is pretty clear a potential 1 2 3, right? Three wave kind of structure. Um, so I would say the high probability focus on the direction here would be upside. Okay, price came towards the 15.618, would be the upside. But of course, you need more kind of like confirmation, right? What I mean by that is if we can see a little bit more of this scale of a V and then it pull back correctively, that would give a little bit more kind of like conviction that price can actually move higher. Okay, I mean this can easily still do something like that, right? Then when you move up. So I would say based on what I'm seeing, selling may not be a good idea, right? Which means that the buys here would definitely not be bearish, but more of like potentially turning bullish, right? So you want to buy, keep out on potential buy opportunities that you can actually look out for the Swiss yen. Okay, so yeah, a couple of you are looking at Swiss yen, right? Euro Canadian. Okay, didn't really reach there. Let me zoom out a bit. Okay, I would view it this point, right? So I just clean up that a little bit. So this is it didn't really tag that 100% as we were initially expected, but I would still see this as a potential completed move. This is one cycle, right? And we are still expecting eventually one cycle back up. Okay. Um, okay, so it's currently tagging that. Yeah. I would see it this way, right? I mean, can this be a three wave? Can this be a leading diagonal in a way, right? Where you have five-way structure in it. And then that would obviously then give you your A wave, and then this is your B wave, and then another C wave up. Very possible. Okay, so the confirmation on this obviously is to wait for the market to show some sign of reversal. Okay, and then wait for the pullback. To tell you that alright, market is reversing. This is the recent swing low, a corrective pullback. Then you can start to look for the upside to complete again this bigger three wave. Alright, so that's my primary take. Okay, so again, this would kind of jump into the same conclusion as Swiss yen. Probably not so much of a downside, but start to look for U-turn, start to look for reversal back up. Right? Okay, yeah. So I think in terms of like opportunities for the week, generally it's gonna be like this tree here, S&P. Okay, gold in terms of like the sell side of things. And then the dollar yen, right, in terms of the setup to sell it. Yeah, that will be the clearest as of now, right? So those trees are definitely the primary focus for this week. Yeah, I mean, if you want to add, you can add Bitcoin to it. I'm not a fan of selling the cryptos. Um, yeah. I mean, fundamentally, in macro perspective, I'm not like, too eager to be selling the Bitcoin. Okay. But it's still a valid trade if let's say you get it set up. As I've described earlier, right? You can get a setup on that. It's still a decent one. Okay, Odd Frank. Okay. Odd Frank, I think near term, this is what I'm gonna be looking out for. I mean, if you can get a decent move back down, okay, I'll be expecting something like that, right? And of course, the internals are this. Okay, so yeah, that would be my expectation. Then of course you can see that this is essentially just a three-wave move. Okay, for maybe a bigger move down after which, right? But that's the expectation now. Okay, yeah, so that's my take. I don't think it's really gonna be worthwhile selling and targeting here, right? It's like what, 60 pips. Not a huge one, right? But I would say maybe you can look out for areas somewhere here, somewhere around 0.56, and then look to buy it according to your setup, and then target is somewhere around 5,720, right? Okay, this move here would be more interesting to catch. Okay, so yeah, that's off, right? Okay, ADA. Okay, I think ADA has some upside potential we can keep watch. Okay, market is potentially forming a little bit of a double bottom around the 618. Even if conservatively, let's say we project this, right? Okay, that will give you the upside all the way up there. Let me see if I can tag. Currently add this in first. Okay. Now let's say we go down to the lower time frame. Okay. Technically, we don't have a valid setup yet, right? If I'm gonna take like this swing low here as the liquidity grab, right, or kind of like a mini fake break or double bottom, then based on this kind of entire development, this would be the swing high that price needs to take out to confirm this double bottom. Okay, which kind of makes sense on a high time frame as well, right? If this is a double bottom, this is the neckline. Price needs to take out this before the confirmation of the double bottom, right? So if you are taking any setup within this range to the buy side, you are taking more of an aggressive technique of entering. Okay, because again going back high time frame, the confirmation is price breaking this pullback, then this pullback buy would be more of a conservative entry. Okay, if you're looking at entering anywhere in between here before price taking out that high, you're more aggressive in entering. Cool. Good. Cool. Yeah, so I think generally that's about it. Dow Jones and Nasdaq, I think we kind of covered that previously already. Yeah, so Nasdaq here is very much similar to S&P. General direction is good. Is going to be focusing on upside. Right. Dow Jones here. Just now the explanation is this can be a cross structure. Right. We have the divergence on RSI as well. Right. So in terms of direction, like generally, U.S. equities are upside. But pattern structure is different across S&P, Nasdaq, and Dow Jones, right? But general direction is still bullish. Okay, that's the focus. And yeah, Okay, so with that, I think that's about it from me for this week. So kind of summarize again very quickly. I think the three opportunities to keep watch within the week will be dollar yen, okay, gold, as well as S&P, and of course Bitcoin if you are into like cryptocurrencies. Okay, good. So that's all the best for the week, and we'll see you guys in the next session. Yeah. Okay. See you guys. Bye bye.